Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to Football Heritage TV. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whoever you support. Look, we've got YouTube royalty. Look who we've got. We've not streamed for ages, but here is Irish Dave, the Irish Hotspur. How you doing, Dave? Long time no see.
Yeah, I'm keeping well, Savva. I suppose at the minute I can't complain. Just trying to survive this international break. It's good that Premier League is back on the weekend. Thank God.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's so boring. I'm trying my best, and I'm trying to give people these different shows about the season up, but I think everybody just kind of switches off, don't they? And then a great big game for England tonight against who is it, Latvia. So yes, I'm sure we'll get 3 points from that. Dave, it's this is the season so far. We just talked for an hour. Going to ask you lots of questions about Tottenham, about what's happened in the summer, what's happened so far. Thomas Frank, the transfer window, your best 11, all that kind of stuff. So if it's okay with you, we'll get straight into it, if that's all right.
Yeah, let's go, lad.
Yeah. And also for you lot in the chat, admin, please know where your nearest fire escape is. I don't want to be the cause of anybody in a fire. Please smash the like button, subscribe to my channel, and if one of my mods will be so kind to put the Irish Hotspurs channel link into the show, that would be absolutely amazing. And let's share the love and the wealth, right? Let's all subscribe to each other. Good morning to you all. If anyone wants to buy me a coffee, the link is there. If you want to super chat, if you don't want to do anything, you don't have to do anything, but smash the like button because that one is free. Dave, let's start with the summer. So Spurs win the Europa League, and then everything goes deathly quiet for a few weeks while Ange goes on holiday. Everyone's going, oh, what's happening? It's all and then the whole club changes. New manager, new backroom staff. Donna Cullen leaves. Levy leaves. Vinay comes out, talks to the people about cash injections and wanting to win titles. What did you make of the summer and the upheaval at Tottenham?
Very chaotic. I think it's one where I sort of, I was very angry at the start of the window. I felt like, leaving it so long to sack Postecoglou if that's what they wanted to do, and then try and bring in Thomas Frank and his coaching staff and all. For me, I felt like it took too long, and I think we missed the period of the window where the likes of Liverpool, Man City, and everybody else was sort of operating and bringing in, their marquee players and stuff like that. And I was starting to get frustrated as the summer went on. Then we were, being told about changes. I'm like, well, this is all good, but, where are the players? And then obviously, we had the miss with Eze, we had the miss with Morgan Gibbs-White as well, which was very, very frustrating. I think Daniel Levy was being played at his own game, in that regards of teams maybe taking the piss with him or dragging out negotiations for better fees, like Daniel Levy is used to doing. But all in all, it seems like, I'm very hesitant to sort of just say everything's changed. I've been here before. New manager Boucher's first 10 games, we all look rosy. And then after this international break, sort of the wheels fall off usually on the previous regimes and stuff like that. So for me, this is the big period coming up for Tottenham Hotspur. But all the changes behind the scenes, I think for the fan base, I think it was needed. Look, I think the change of manager, regardless whether Ange won us the Europa League, and it was the right thing to do. And, sort of give France, and especially someone like Thomas Frank, who's very popular choice amongst the Spurs fans, in terms of replacing Ange Postecoglou. And I think they got that one right. I think it went a long way to maybe getting fans to buy in again and stuff like that. Then you also have the changes at boardroom level, which I think was a massive, help again towards fans, buying it back in towards the club and stuff. And then also with Daniel Levy sort of stepping down, I think, it's given many fans a sort of renewed hope or renewed optimism moving forward. And it looks like that the Lewis family do want to invest in the football club. They do want to keep it within their name. Vinay done an interview on the Spurs YouTube channel last month, basically saying they're looking to keep this in the family, for generations and stuff like that. And, that they want to make the men's and the women's team successful, and that they understand it's going to take significant finance and that they're prepared to do it. So, I think all the messaging coming out of the club is good, because it feels like that these guys really do want to push us on to be able to be successful. And the way I look at it, I think Daniel Levy had his time anyway. So have a look. I wasn't one that, I absolutely hated the guy and despised the guy, and I woke up every morning crying because he was the chairman at a football club. However, I was one where I think, I recognise the good that he done for this football club, the growth that he brought this football club. But I feel like, he had lost his way in terms of he didn't really know how to go and push on to that next level and compete. When the chance came around to regenerate the squad, he went back down the route of tried and tested where he brought in young, and was looking to develop a team moving forward. And for me, I think that signaled the end of Daniel Levy. I think many people are looking at him going, okay, now we need players of a certain caliber, of a certain level, go and deliver. And I think he failed in that largely. So I think that sort of ended his tenure at Tottenham Hotspur. And it's just exciting that we're going in a new direction. And if you look at some of the signings we've made already this summer, Savva, the likes of Paulinho and Kudos, look at the massive difference they've made. Look at the point that them two players have put on the board alone. And this is something that me, you, and many others have screamed about in the past. The problem isn't how much we spend, it's what we spend it on. And I think that was proven, this summer by the likes of Kudos and Paulinho's arrival, and you spend it right, they will have a massive impact on what you're trying to do.
No, you're absolutely right. I think this is one of the biggest myths at Spurs, isn't it? For years has been, we don't spend. Levy's tight or ENIC are tight. Well, I don't ever think that was the issue. I think you're right. The issue was what are we actually spending the money on? But before we get to the new signings, I'm going to take you back into succession. So you said that it was the right thing to do for the last manager to move on, and that Thomas Frank looks like he's I think your words were, looks like he's the right appointment or popular choice or whatever you said.
Yeah,
talk to me about that. So when Thomas Frank was announced, I think we all knew that his name was the one being bandied around. He wasn't giving any interviews as the Brentford manager, which kind of gave it away a little bit. He wasn't talking about any new Brentford signings. What was your first thoughts when he was announced?
Yeah.
What do you make of him? And moving the conversation forward, what was it for you? What was the key thing that he had to do coming into Tottenham Hotspur as the manager?
Yeah, look, for me, I was sort of a bit torn because, Andrew just won us a Europa League trophy, and it's sort of like, despite all the naysayers, despite all the stuff aimed at him, he was the one to deliver a trophy, at Tottenham Hotspur. And I was sort of looking at it, I was like, do you know what? They're going to find it really hard to sort of sack this guy. But, when they sacked him, there wasn't really that much furore around it, which shows fans were probably done with it anyway, thanks to the Europa League, time to move on. Now, bringing in Thomas Frank, look, I was one of the ones, I was a bit annoyed, but not annoyed. I was sort of a little bit let down at the time in terms of Spurs' ambition, in terms of, I thought maybe there was managers out there they could have went and got that were maybe more glamorous, more exciting. And, to be honest, that sort of showed me a pathway to trophies, more or less, quicker rather than later. However, and when we signed Thomas Frank, I did say at the time, I think, when he comes from Brentford, he will bring in structure around the defence. He will bring in structure around defensive set pieces, which will put more points on the board. He will also, make Spurs more potent from set pieces, which is a way of circumventing how crap we are going forward, and again, we'll score goals, which will put more points on the board. My big thing about Thomas Frank at Brentford, he had one of the lowest possession stats last season in the league. That will not fly at Tottenham Hotspur. And in terms of in possession, is somewhere where he was going to have to adapt coming to Tottenham Hotspur. Plus, he had a big job on his hand, making that front line more fluid, creating more chances, becoming more devastating. And my big question mark was around, can he bring that to Tottenham Hotspur? Because there is an element where he's sort of learning on the job to do that. Because at Brentford, like I said, they had the lowest possession stats. They went a lot more direct and stuff like that. Whereas at Spurs, you see at home games and stuff, fans don't like spending long periods, out of possession and stuff. They do see Tottenham as a team that should be on the ball, playing possession-based football and stuff like that. So that is still an area where I think Thomas Frank still needs to improve. However, I think it's very, very important that fans understand the likes of Maddison and Kulusevski out injured. They would come back. They would make a massive difference in terms of options across that front line. He's had new players being brought in here in the terms of likes of Kudos. Simons was still waiting for Kolo Muani, from the world's longest dead leg to come back and play and stuff like that. So I do think that element will improve once these options start coming back. I think when I look at it now, it's very hard for him to get a front line together that is going to rip teams apart that have that devastating nature. I think we actually get into some good positions. Some of the players we use and just make the wrong choices and kill attacks.
Yeah.
And as much as we say Frank is a great coach, which he is, he said it himself, now with Champions League football and flying here and flying there, they don't have as much time on the training pitch. And when you don't have much time on the training pitch, that's when you truly do rely on the caliber of player. And I think we're sort of seeing that. I think many people expect him to work wonders with Brennan Johnson. He is still struggling to give 99% of what a winger does. Whereas you look at someone like Mo Kudus, just give him the ball, let him go and, let him go and do his magic. And I think for me, it really highlights that when you are in Europe and you are challenging across all four fronts, the quality of your players really do matter. When you don't have Europe is when you have time to sit there and develop players.
Yeah. No, listen, you're absolutely spot on. And I think that's a really good point that not many people talk about. It is a lack of time on the training pitch when you are in Europe, as opposed to when you're not. When you're not, you have, let's say you play on the Saturday. You've then got, assuming the players have Sunday off, you've then got Monday to Friday, all day, every day to talk about your plans. Let's say you're not, though. Let's say you play on Saturday, but then you're in Europe on the Tuesday. Sunday's off, Monday's traveling, Tuesday's playing, Wednesday you're coming back. Now, all of a sudden, you've got Thursday and Friday before you're playing again. So it's very difficult. But I think you're right there, Dave. The players that seem to be out for us at the moment are the technically good ones. Obviously you've got Kudus and Xavi Simons, who we'll talk about in a minute, but the likes of Kulu, the likes of Maddison, these are the technically better players, the ones that are comfortable on the ball. And when you've got players who are comfortable on the ball, that normally results in possession, doesn't it? Because they're the ones that don't go, remember at school, I don't know if they did it, was like hot potato. You remember it was sort of like, I don't want it, you have it. But no, I think you're right. And I think that possession is something that will come over time. And one of the key things about him, I mean, Brentford last year were were they the fourth or fifth top scorers in the Premier League under Frank? So we know that he does like to develop in those forward areas. But I think you're absolutely right. So talk to me then, Dave.
Just quickly, Savva. I think he's played an absolute blinder in the way he's come in and set things up. I think the way he set up that defense first, but by making it strong, even if you don't play well, it gives you a chance to put points on the board. And I think we've seen that at times this season. And also if we don't attack well, the fact that we have avenues from the throw-ins, from the set pieces, again, means even if we're not playing well in terms of going forward, we always have a chance of nicking a goal, which always also, helps put points on the board. And at the end of the day, what he's done, although it's nowhere near the finished article, he's done more than enough, I think, to buy him time from the Spurs fan base and buy him patience to be able to bring the rest in. And lastly, I think the way he's handled the press has been absolutely brilliant. I think in years gone by, some of the managers we've had have always brought so much attention, towards Tottenham Hotspur, so much heat.
Jose and Conte and Ange.
And Ange Postecoglou. And, it's all by the way their demeanour, the way they speak and stuff like that. Whereas I think with Thomas Frank, one thing I really like about him is he's very likable in the media, but he doesn't shy away from the problems. He doesn't just, it's not a problem. What are you talking about? Like when people went to Ange Postecoglou with set pieces last year or the year before, he sort of just dismissed it, brushed it off. It's not an important part of the game. I'm focused on how we are going forward. And it's sort of like, that's where I was sort of looking at. I'm like, yeah, but if you're a winner, every aspect of the game matters. You put attention and detail into every sort of aspect. Whereas with Thomas Frank, I think you can clearly see that he's doing that. But also when he is asked about problems, he doesn't shy away from them and he will speak about, what the problem is. For instance, after the Villarreal game, he was asked, about the attacking problems. He said, look, down the right-hand side, we got a good relationship with Kudus and Porro, down the left-hand side. We haven't really, we've been chopping and changing because of injuries and stuff like that. And they haven't developed the relationships and stuff. And I think when fans look to that, and listen to that, they go, well, yeah, it makes sense, and we'll give him a little bit of time to fix that and stuff. And I just think in general, the way he's handling the media, he's deflected a lot of the attention off Tottenham Hotspur right now, which gives us the time then to be able to just put points on the board without any of the attention, without any of the scrutiny. And you'd hope then by the time that does come around, because eventually you keep putting points on the board, you keep hanging around where we are, the attention and all will be back, but it'll be a good sort of tension, a good sort of scrutiny rather than just Tottenham being a laughing stock all the time in terms of press conferences and the sound bites that come out.
No, absolutely. This was the key thing for me. As you probably saw, Dave, in the summer, I'm a big Thomas Frank fan. He's everything I like in a manager and a coach,
Yeah.
and a lot of that is down to not just the management and the coaching. It is down to how you operate in the with the media. It is because we get, as fans, we get to hear from our manager maybe twice a week. It's after a game and before the next game, right? Let's be fair. That's what you do. You get to hear, and I want to hear what a manager has to say. I want to watch and go, right. Somebody ask him a difficult question and he'll tell us the answer. And after games, he's coming onto the pitch, isn't he, and saying, "Yeah, I really like this." He was like, "Oh, I didn't like this. This was not good. We have to work on this." I like that, Dave. I like that honesty.
Well, that's what you want as a fan, though, isn't it? You don't want
Sure,
someone over there
sure.
sugarcoating problems or ignoring problems and stuff like that, And also, Frank doesn't go too negative. He goes, well, no, there was good elements. There's this, and this. But this is an area, we need to work on. And I think that's what you want to hear as a fan, because it shows that they're not naive. They're not just glossing over things. They don't think they're the greatest people in the world, that they realize, there is problems. And in order to become a better team, there's problems and that they're willing to go and fix it. And I think that's all you want to see as a football fan, Savva.
No, I completely agree with you. Well, look, let's move to, I want to move to the signings we made. Now, we're going to talk about the free signings we made. I'm fully aware I'm about to leave out Kolomawani and Takai purely because they've not played, right? So it's absolutely pointless going to that. But Xavi Simons, Kudus, and Paulinho. You touched upon this earlier about the caliber of spending the money wisely. How impressed have you been so far? How good of signings were they? Does Paulinho need to become permanent? How good is Kudus? Yada, yada, yada.
Well, I think, look, Paulinho needs to become permanent straight away. I think we've seen the massive impact that he's had, something that, look, fans were screaming out about for years. We need that sort of midfield destroyer that can help make us combative in there. And I think, you look at a lot of the other options. Bentancur is still sort of doing what he done, last season. Bergvall and Sarr is still operating the same. But the one big difference is Paulinho. He's made us combative in the midfield, which I think in years gone by, you just seen teams blitz through us straight through the middle. Whereas with Paulinho, he breaks up play, he pulls down moves. There was one big one against me where I really noticed, where I was like, yeah, this guy's got it. We need to make it permanent. It was actually against Man City. Last year against Man City, they came at us through the middle, and Johnson had a chance to take a player out, pull it down, and let us reset behind the ball. He failed to do so, and they ended up going and scoring off the back of it, and he just didn't recognize the danger that was coming Johnson. Whereas with Paulinho, Man City had a move, I think it was in the first half, they looked quite in off the left-hand side, and you could see what they were doing. They're going ready to target Pedro Porro, and Paulinho pulled it down, allowed us to get back behind the ball. And they're the small things in football that make a difference. But what I love about Paulinho, he seems to do it, but without getting bookings. He does it very, very intelligently, and he does it repeatedly. But also, I think the biggest surprise for many is the goals that he's added, how good he actually has been on the ball. I think when we signed him, we all knew we were going to get that guy that was going to give us a bit of steel in the midfield, a presence, combative presence. But I think in terms of in the ball, in possession, he's just picked up the ball, recycled it nicely. And then also he's getting in the box, the direct free kicks, the direct throw-ins coming in. He's scoring goals off the back of it and stuff like that. So for me, I think he's been a massive, massive signing. I think he's probably been the most important signing actually this summer in terms of, because he actually helps shield the centre backs as well, which means teams aren't getting as many shots on our goal as they were last year and stuff like that. So I think he's been absolutely critical in helping Frank set up this whole defensive structure here at Tottenham. I question, would it be as good if we were still using some of the same midfield options, or we didn't go and get Paulinho? I'd probably argue not. So I think he's been absolutely massive, and I think Spurs need to make it permanent. When you go on to go on,
sorry,
what's your thoughts on him?
Just quickly, just with that, I think that's one of the key things that Thomas Frank said, didn't he, when he bought him? He said, I assessed what I needed, and he said I needed a player of that profile. And the thing is, Dave, I mean, let's be fair, for I would say 2 years, but this has been going on for maybe 4 or 5 years. I think we've all sat there and gone, we need a 6. Yeah. This isn't just imposter Coglu's reign. We're all sitting there going, we need a 6. Winks isn't a 6. Skip isn't a 6. Sissoko wasn't. Bentancur isn't. Ndombele, Lo Celso. We need a 6. And it makes such a difference, Dave. And I'll tell you what I like about him. I actually think he doesn't get enough credit for I hear how bad his passing is. His passing is actually very good.
I agree.
He wins the ball and he gives it really well to whoever's in a better position. Top player for me. Top player.
On that, I know people are looking at him and want him to be the complete package and want him to start spraying 60-yard balls around the place. But, you know, I remember Harry Redknapp done it when he brought in Wilson Palacios. He said, you just go and hunt the ball, turn it over, recycle it to Luka Modric, let him go and do all the playing. And that's exactly what you want from sort of like João Paulini, you know. When you're bringing him in here to be that destroyer, to go and pull down moves and stuff like that, you know, all you want him to do is just move that ball onto the next, you know, simply onto the next guy and let him go and create. So Paulini can sort of sit in there. Exactly. Also, one area where he's been absolutely huge is second balls. When we do put teams under pressure and the ball's coming out, the amount of times that guy is there winning headers, winning tackles and recycling it and keeping the pressure on in the final third, I think is absolutely also crucial. Now, when it comes to Mo Kudus, I mean, this has been a guy that, you know, the type of player that I've been screaming out for a long time. I know, you know, a lot of people had their frustrations with Postecoglou last year, but one thing I did say with him in terms of, you know, the attack, I was like, there's just nothing this guy can do with the options that we've got available. And I think many people are sort of seeing that, you know, with some of the performance that some of the players that were here last year have put in on the Frank this year, being underwhelming and stuff. But, you know, I think Mo Kudus has been exactly what we needed. You know, he gets on the ball. Not only, first of all, when you're a winger or a striker, the most important thing is being able to hold up that ball. He does that absolutely exceptionally well. That ball can come at him from 60 miles per hour from 2 yards away. He's taking it down on the chest. He's absolutely phenomenal. When you see the likes of Richarlison trying to hold up a ball, it is painful to watch. When you see the likes of Solanke trying to hold up a ball, it's a bit better, but also can be painful to watch. Johnson, forget about it. Udapur, if he drops off and gets 5-10 yard space, he's good at it. But when he's up against a fullback trying to hold it up, forget about it. And I think that's been the massive difference this year is, first and foremost, the guy can hold up a ball. And this is one thing that drives me mad about Richarlison. You look at Mo Kudus, he gets in front of his man, he makes himself big, and he takes the ball down. And when you do that and you make yourself big, it's difficult for the defender to come around either side and nick that ball. When you look at Richarlison hold up the ball, he's always side on. Always, which gives the defender a chance to pull him down, come around the side, or because he's always trying to do it side on, the ball's bouncing off his feet like it's a fucking concrete wall, you know, so the ball's going here, there, and everywhere, and we find it very hard to get a hold of it. So Mo Kudus, first and foremost, is a phenomenal outball, which gives us the foundation to go at teams. But what I love most about it, you know, I've seen so many wingers at Tottenham in years gone by get the ball, pass it back inside, and I am going ballistic. Now, maybe I'm a bit old school, Savva here, but for me, you pay your wingers to go and create. If the ball is going to them, you want them to get turned.
Tell your mate Sean Butler. Tell your mate Sean Butler this. He's constantly going, oh no, Odegaard's a different winger. And I'm like, no, you're a winger. You have to go and give your fullback a game, right? You have to make your fullback think, take him on, you know.
What? You're right. What your fullback wants you to do is constantly move that ball away. You're giving him an easy game. For me, I find that a wind up that, you know, it's I think it's a football problem in general that a lot of the wingers now, a lot of the attacking players just want to play safe, keep possession. I'm screaming. I'm like, we pay you the big bucks. You get paid more than the defenders and stuff, so that you go and create because you are the flair guy in the team. Now go and do it. I often feel like when they're passing on the responsibility, they're actually shirking responsibility, in my opinion.
I agree.
But what I like about Kudus, he gets turned, he'll take players on. And to be honest with you, it doesn't matter. They can have 10 people stacked up along that line, one after another. He'll take them all on. But he also has that bit of quality off the end of it, you know, a good cross. You know, he can link up with others. And, you know, over the last couple of weeks against Wolves, I think he had that disallowed goal, then scored against Leeds. He's starting to add a few goals, which I think was the missing piece, you know, to Mo Kudus at Tottenham Hotspur. And I think that was always going to take time because at the end of the day, I think many people are looking at Mo Kudus and expecting him to sort of just take on the whole team and put the ball in the back of net. At this level, you're never going to get away with that. He's not Lionel Messi.
You get one of those a season, right?
One of
those a season, and then everyone goes, "Oh, why can't he do it every game?" Well, you know, it's
you need players to link up with. It's as simple as that at this level. You know, you look at Mo Salah at Liverpool. Look at him out. Look at the amount of players that Mo Salah has to link up with at Liverpool, where he wants to play 1-2s, balls in behind and stuff like that. And I feel like with Mo Kudus, you are starting to see him maybe link up with others, which I think is sort of, hopefully will add more goals to his game and take him to the next level. But him as a signing, I've absolutely loved watching them. I've absolutely enjoyed watching them. I think last year when I was looking at the 4 players, I was bored to death. It was making me angry. Kudus has been a breath of fresh air and has shown everybody what a winger can do. He's not a specialist in one area. He can do all areas, can hold up the ball, get turned, take people on. I think at Tottenham in years gone by, our attack has been very restricted. You look at Johnson, for instance, people go, well, he scores goals at the back post. Okay, well, how's that going for him under Thomas Frank when the system isn't set up for him to arrive at the back post and tap balls home? Can he get on the ball and create and do the job of what, for instance, Mo Kudus is doing? And he's nowhere near that level, and he's not too far off the age of Mo Kudus either. So for me, it shows that there's different levels, and I'm sick of the limited players 4 players at Tottenham Hotspur. Bringing in Mo Kudus has been a breath of fresh air. He can do a bit of everything, and that's a quality player for me, Savva.
Do you know what as well? I think you see the best of Mo Kudus we will see the best of him, when he has a number 10 who stays in the number 10, i.e. if Xavi stays there now. But also when he has a competent centre forward to play with. So a lot of things that are thrown at Kudus is, but he's greedy. I get why he's greedy. Otherwise, he's looking up and going, right, who do I pass to that isn't going to lose the ball? If he passes it into Richarlison, that man can't hold up a ball for toffee. He's one of the worst strikers I've ever seen. Right? If he gives it to Brennan Johnson, if he gives it to, do you know what I mean? But
yeah, of course.
You watching the last couple of games where him and Xavi Simons have had some time together in the team next to each other, you can see their link up. They're starting to a little bit of 1-2s. Now imagine he's got a top centre forward doing that as well. Mm-hmm. Imagine he's got an Ivan Toney that he knows will hold the ball up and lay him back in. I think Kudus is... I think this is a very underrated footballer that a lot of our fans turn their noses up at because they looked at his stats last year at West Ham rather than looking at the player himself.
Not me. I was one of them. I remember he played against us for West Ham a couple of times, and he destroyed us every time he got the ball.
Yeah.
Every time. I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at the likes of Johnson and that up front. I'm like, can we just go and get someone like that? And the fact that we brought him in, for me, I wasn't one of them where I looked at the output. You got to take into account. West Ham weren't a free scoring team last year. They had troubles. They're not a great sort of side. And at the end of the day, you're looking at someone like Kudus to carry the can. You can't do it every single week. And for me, I knew him coming in here would excite me just because he does most of what a 4 player is expected to do.
I knew Sean was in it. Now Odeberg's gone to the king of 1-2s now. Is that what we're doing? Odeberg's gone from he's okay to the king of 1-2s.
Look, on Wilson Odeberg quickly, Sav. I don't know what you make of this, my man, but for me,
be careful. Sean is listening. And he is the biggest Odeberg and Tell fan I've ever seen in my life.
Well, I was going to say he was going to be pro me, but now I'm also going to make him anti me, probably. Look, I actually think Odeberg is better than Matisse Tell. In fairness, I think he's produced more than Matisse Tell. I think when you look at it, Savva, right? When Jed Spence plays there, he's right-footed on the left-hand side, which means every time he wants to get that ball, he's looking to pass inside all the time, rather than go direct down the line. And when you see him play there against Bodo Glimt, right, just as a bite-sized example, Odeberg struggled for large periods of that game. But as soon as Destiny Udogie came on and started ramping forward on the overlap, he created a lot more space down that side for Wilson Odeberg, which meant then he could get at his fullback. He could get on the ball, get at his fullback. You also go back to the Wolves game, where we end up drawing 1-1. When Jed Spence played at right back, Kudus didn't have anywhere near as a massive effect on the game as he does when Pedro Porro is there. For me, I think that's the absolute key. Is, the fullbacks bombing forward, taking players away from the wingers and giving them time, allowing them time on the ball to be able to go at their fullbacks, at their markers and create space. And I don't think Wilson Odeberg's been helped with Jed Spence playing down that side behind him. What I'm trying to say is I think when Destiny Udogie plays there, you get much more out of someone like Wilson Odeberg than when Jed Spence plays there.
Dave, I agree. And I'll go to the Jed Spence point in a minute. But I think you made the point earlier. I don't disagree with anything you've just said, but he is still a winger and he still has to offer what wingers offer. And the problem is at the moment, he's almost not playing as a winger. At the moment, what he is playing as is a conduit to allow Udogie to go past him. Now, that's fine. Fine. I'm all for that. But what frustrates me the most about this is there's been many times where Udogie isn't flying forward and Odeberg's got one-on-one with his man. And it's like, right, now let's see, you're a winger. Let's see what you've got in the tank. And I'm not saying you have to beat him with dazzling skill or pace, but can you get near him and whip the crossing? It feels to me he does what you said you don't like. It was the gets it, turns back, 5-yard pass. That's fine, but that's just not my type of winger.
No,
now,
agreed.
I said just yesterday on the show with Sean and the boys, if Odegaard starts adding that to his game, I've got no problem with that. But my problem is this kid, like we're calling him a kid. He's been a pro for 3, 4, 5 years, however long he's been playing now. My concern is that he never tries to really go at his man. My concern is that I don't see anything from him as a wide man where I go, oh, yeah, that was good. He does the safe thing. And at the moment, you could get anybody to play out there and give the ball to Udogie. I could put anyone out there and go, just lay in Udogie. That's fine. But for me, we're Tottenham. And I feel that when people are justifying it this much, not you, I feel like we're forgetting we're a Champions League football club. That shouldn't be the benchmark of a winger. Does he allow Udogie to overlap? Does he pass the ball 5 yards?
No,
Honestly?
I agree.
He needs more.
I agree with you, but when you look at Kudus and Porro, the way they link up, it is important that you do have that relationship with your fullback in terms of, just being able to play balls in behind and stuff like that as well for the guy. I think, when I look at Wilson Odegaard, I do think his biggest problem is the end product. But I tried to highlight that when we signed him in the first place. I said, look, this guy is nowhere near the finished article. And it's what wound me up. A lot of the Irish Postecoglou fans turned on me, and I was one of them at the time. And I was like, but guys, this business isn't good. It's not good enough. No, Andrew's magic. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. And I think, many people bit them on the ass last year because it shows that, the quality of player does matter. But with Wilson Odegaard, I think his biggest problem is, like you said, he's crossing. He's sort of end product a lot of the times. I find it underwhelming. Even he gets himself in great positions to be able to score goals. But you often see that youthfulness, that excitement where he's just leathering it, isn't he? He's just smashing it. There's no calmness. There's no composure about what he's doing in terms of his finishing. That one, it either clicks or it doesn't. And that's the risk you're sort of taking with someone like Wilson Odegaard. It's not what anyone can get in and give him advice and stuff like that. But do you take it on board and can you bring that to your game in the moment? And
but has he got
the big question, can he?
Dave, the thing is as well, though, everyone talks as though every young player is going to 100% be coachable and add that to their game. The problem is whenever I've seen him play, even for Burnley, he's not that type of player. Now, as I've said, I know this goes over. I've got a type of player I like, right? And for me, Odegaard is a safe little footballer, right? I think he should be out of Burnley. That's what I think. That's his level. I want to see a top left winger. And Dave, you've probably seen me say, I was so frustrated that Tottenham did not buy a left winger in the summer. Like, I feel like it was, I said it, I think it was negligent. I think it was absolutely shambolic from the football club to let Son go. That bit wasn't the shambolic bit, by the way, that Son goes and that you don't replace him. That for me was terrible. And what we've done again is we've done that thing where we go, well, let's see how good this young kid can be or this young kid can be. That's fine. But we're a Champions League football team now. Surely what it should be is, right, let's bring in the top left winger and then Odegaard is coming on for the last 15 minutes of games or playing a few weaker teams in the Premier League and in the League Cup games. But we've gone the other way. We're like, go on, Odegaard. And I just think, this is the last thing I'll say on it, because otherwise it sounds like I have an agenda. I just don't see the fuss about him. I just think, Dave, if I'm a right back playing against Wilson Odegaard, I think I'm having an okay day. I.e., this weekend we've got Villa, right? If Matty Cash starts, if I'm Matty Cash, I'm quietly comfortable going forward because I know Wilson Odegaard is the winger, right?
100%.
If I'm the left back, let's say it's Luca Digne, I know I've got an absolute a torrid game against Kudus for 90 minutes. And that's the difference for me. So when we're talking about, he allows Udogie to overlap, sure, but you're a winger. Go and make Matty Cash shit himself.
No, 100%. Look, I agree with you. I think if you are a fullback, you are sort of, delighted when Johnson is named on the team sheet or, Odegaard is named on the team sheet. But the only one that can strike fear into them is Wilson Odegaard. Like you said, by getting on the ball, driving at the opponents and, delivering that bit of end product, that bit of quality off the back of it.
No, completely agree. And just your point on Jed Spence there before we move to Xavi Simons. I agree with you. Jed Spence, I feel for him in some ways because as a fullback, he's the best defensive fullback we've got. Right? Like not a lot goes past him. The problem he's got is he almost seems like he's better on the left than the right. And you're absolutely spot on. If you've got a right-footed player playing at left back, they naturally will drift inside or pass the ball inside, which means you don't get the width. I get that, but that's a problem that we're going to have to figure out over the years because he's just signed a new contract. Adogi seems to now be the first choice left back. Porro seems to be the first choice right back. But if we were playing against a Mohamed Kudus, Dave, I want Spence marking him. 100%. I don't want Porro marking him. I want Spence marking him. But then you have to give away a little bit going the other way. But
you see, that's the big thing, though, Savva. I think, when you look at it, once that forward line is of a desired quality and is of the right standard and can break teams down from open play and isn't just relying on a lot of set pieces and stuff, then you have the option to take Pedro Porro. You go back to what Thomas Frank said before one of the recent games in terms of pre-match press conference. He says the right-hand side create everything. And that explains why Pedro Porro keeps playing down that side, regardless of the game, regardless of the opponent. Because we are so heavily reliant on him and Mo Kudus to get forward and create chances so that we can try and get points on the board and stuff like that. Once the left start producing, once we start producing during the middle, and you're not so heavily reliant on someone like Pedro Porro, because, look, I get it. I get all the questions about Pedro Porro defensively. You look every single game, no matter the opposition, he is the target. They put the ball right on top of him, down his side a lot of the time.
Look at
the reason why they keep doing this, because he struggles. He's constantly calling for Romero or Paulinho or somebody to come over and help him rather than dealing with it one-on-one like a Spence, like a Destiny Udogie. But until we're better going forward, you're going to keep seeing him play. And I think, that answers many fans' questions on why he keeps playing over Jed Spence out there is because he's just better going forward. He offers us a 60-yard pass out from the back straight onto a midget stake. He offers us good crossing ability. He offers us set piece ability. What? Onto a midget stick, 60 yards onto midget stick. He's got an unbelievable passing range.
Said that, and I'm like, did he just say that? Love that.
Yeah, he's got an unbelievable passing range, Savva. He does. He's an unbelievable passing range, Savva. So, basically what I'm trying to say is he's too good going forward, and it's sad that we're relying on our right back to create a lot of our chances along with the right winger, but that's where we are right now. Until we get better going forward, then you won't see Porro come out of the team. But when we do get better going forward, it's simple for me. You play Jed Spence in the big games. The big games where Porro's going to be a target, you put him in there.
I completely agree with you. But one thing that has helped with that is the inclusion of Paulinho, who's able to come over and smell that danger. So, look, of the before I get your best 11, I want to talk about Xavi Simons because this is a really interesting one. There was a lot of hype around when he signed, and I've watched this boy play for Leipzig and Holland. I think he's a really top player, but clearly someone that needs some time. Clearly somebody that needs to get used to the pace of the Prem and all that kind of stuff. But we are seeing him now being moved into that 10. And I think we saw some really good moments from him in that Leeds game. Some really good through balls, some good linking up play, good passing. What do you make of Xavi Simons and how good can this boy be for Tottenham?
Yeah, look, for me, I was a bit... a lot of people are calling me negative at the time, but when we signed them, I was like, look, this kid is going to take time. He's not just going to come in and be the answers to all of our problems, like many people were telling me. I think he came with a similar hype, towards Matisse Tell last January. I remember last January saying, look, to expect a 19-year-old kid to walk straight into the Premier League, become a player off the bench to a starter and go and score us the goals and assist goals that we need. It's a huge ask, and it's almost impossible what you were asking Matisse Tell to do last January. Yet he came with such hype. And I think, to be honest with you, a lot of that hype comes from people that play FIFA, Football Manager, and stuff like that, rather than actually, taking into account, the real life situation. And I think we sort of done the same.
That they might be a human being, need some time to settle, time to adapt, time to change, family, kids.
Well, they're young guys, right? You're moving into London, which I come from Ireland into London for a game, and you get overwhelmed with the size of the city compared to what I'm used to and stuff like that. You know, then you also got to take into account the physicality of the Premier League. It's the most physical league in the world, and it's the most demanding league in the world. You have to be super fit and super strong. A lot of these guys are having to come in and sort of, you know, work on that. So it's always going to take them time, you know, to fit into this team, especially in the front. You know, and I was one of them where I didn't expect Xavi to come in and be the answers to all my problems and the answers to all my prayers. I knew it was going to take time, and I think we've seen that. But one thing I really do like about him, he gives you that unpredictability, that one little chip ball over the top against Leeds for Pedro Porro. Can't remember the last time I've seen a player attempt that. You know, it's just them little things. Gets on the ball, playing balls in behind for players to run onto, rather than everyone having to come for feet. It's the vision that he's got. But also, he's got a good strike of the ball. You know, he's found himself in great positions on the edge of the box. Just maybe hasn't had the end product, you know, off the back of it. But I think give him time. I've seen more than enough that it will come, and he's going to be a good signing for Tottenham Hotspur. It's just going to take him a little bit of time, and I think fans are going to have to show him a little bit of patience. But I've seen more than enough of him in terms of even his work rate and stuff like that out of possession to know that it will work out for the kid at Tottenham.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Completely agree. Dave, I want to show you, first of all, I want to ask my chat where the likes are. I mean, guys, today we've had 100 likes and not one subscriber. I mean, surely we can do better than this, right? Surely we can do better than this. My link is pinned. Also, please, if one of my mods would put Dave's link in again and get him some more subscribers, that would be brilliant. And the like button is free. And I'll be back, by the way, at 4 p.m. today with Just Joe. He's going to be giving us his Leeds season so far. And we know Joe. I love Just Joe after he called Spurs shit when we were streaming together and then had to do a humble video about us beating them. It was very good fun. And also big up to Dean Law, who's put in a super sticker. Thank you so much, my man. Starting the super sticker train nice and early. Big up, Dean. Always very generous to me. So thank you very much, buddy. FK Arsenal says Xavi will flop. But based on what? Why will Xavi flop? I feel like people who are saying these things, it's far like he's had like 5 games and in the Premier League or 4 Premier League games. I'm really not sure.
Some off the left, some through the middle. You know, you got it. It's difficult for the kid.
Yeah. But we'll see. We'll see. Listen, I don't understand why people are saying Xavi will flop. I don't know where that comes from. He's a very good footballer. It's almost like we want everyone to flop. It's all like we want everyone to flop. Surely anyone that's watched Xavi Simons throughout the years, even though he's only 22, can see he's a really, really good footballer. Okay, right, you were joking. All right, I'll let you off. He is. Yeah, he's a very good player. Dave, I want to bring up, I'll put an 11 for Spurs together. And this is what I would perceive at the moment is the best 11. I want you to tell me whether you agree with the formation, if you'd move any players around, and don't get annoyed in the chat. This is just loosely. This isn't the be all and end all. So this is what I put together via our good friends over at FootMob lineup builder. The goalkeeper, by the way, is Vicario, but we'll talk about Vicario in a little bit. If I was to say to you, Dave, and obviously this is with the injuries, right? So this isn't including Kulu and Maddison, etc. If I was to say that is Spurs' best 11, would I be along the right lines? Is this the right formation? What would you want me to change?
No, I think you're absolutely spot on. I think, you know, in terms of what we've got available right now, it's look, the back 5, I'm going to call it, with the goalkeeper picks itself. You know, there's no changes there you really would make. Maybe if you're going into a big game, the only change I would make is maybe Spence for Porro, just for that extra bit of defensive solidity. But in general, the back 5 is our best. Now, look, when it comes to around this midfield partnership, to be honest with you, there's a lot of crying about it. I don't understand why, to be quite frank with you. I think when it comes to Rodrigo Bentancur in there, I know a lot of people have their problems, but, you know, they're almost, he's not creative enough. Ask more of Johnson instead of defending him. Ask more of Tell instead of defending him all the time. Ask more of Odegaard and stuff like that, rather than put the problems back on the likes of your Paulini and stuff, and Bentancur and stuff like that. When you look at the period where we were drawing games and dropping points, it's because he broke up Paulini and Bentancur. When them two were playing, we were winning games. Look, I get, you know, some people go, oh, it's a bit boring. But they do exactly what you want as a double pivot. Yeah, Paulini goes and wins balls, and Bentancur keeps it moving. Now, granted, if we had a player in the team who could, spray balls around from a deeper position, then I understand the debate. But we don't have one. So right now, he has to play there. Until we go and get a player of that caliber, or a player that is more of a deep line playmaker that can get on the ball and put your balls over the top for your wingers to run onto and stuff like that, I hear it. But until then, there's no point in having the conversation, because I'm sorry, but Gray ain't better than Bentancur. I don't think Bergvall is, and I don't think Papa Matasar is in them deeper positions. I think Bentancur is the most comfortable midfielder we've got on the ball, so I'm happy with that partnership. What's your thoughts on that, Savva, in terms of that partnership? Because it is one that after every game you go on and people are pulling out Bentancur left, right, and centre, and to be honest with you, I struggle to understand it.
I think it's one of those ones where our fans are absolutely obsessed with young players. I think we're absolutely obsessed with the young player rather than what works for the team. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. If Bentancur was putting in the same performance as he is, but was called Bergvall and was 19 years of age, everyone would be praising it. Everyone would be finding all the positives he does. The problem that we have here is Bentancur and Paulinho, first of all, they give you that experience. They're both experienced Premier League footballers and international footballers as well. Like, they're both hard workers. They both know their job. They both stick to their positions. Right. And as you said, is that the most sexy, glamorous thing? No, not always. But is it needed? Well, yeah, I think it is needed. When you look at the fact that we don't have a ball playing number 8, the fact that we've got players missing that are technical, like Maddison and Kulu, that can take pressure off the midfield, I think it's very much needed. And I think you're bang on. Is Gray better than Bentancur? No. So why is there this sudden clamour for him to start above him? Is Bergvall better than Bentancur? I don't think so in any way. What he is Bergvall is young. So he gets... This is where I struggle, right? Dave, this will sound harsh, Dave. You know me. I get some criticism. It's fine, right? This is where I struggle, because our fans are so much about, but he's young, but he's young, but he's young. My answer to this is, but with Tottenham Hotspur, right? Yeah. This should not be about, oh, everybody gets time because they're young, because these players are playing for Tottenham Hotspur. Bergvall, if he's going to start for Tottenham, play well. Not, oh, but he's only 19. No. If you're in that first 11, you have to play well. And the difference for me is, I use the Leeds game as an example, Dave. So this is what we did against Leeds, right? With Tell instead of Moani. This is what we played against Leeds, okay? And for me, Leeds United played Longstaff, Stack, and Ethan Ampadu as a midfield three. All big, strong, powerful, running lads, right? You know, against that three, are they going to pass it around you for fun? No. But are they going to battle? Are they going to get stuck in? Are they going to be physical? Yes. I want Bentancur or Paulinho to play there because they will be up for that battle.
Yeah.
Bergvall, as I keep saying, is more of a runner with the ball. He's more one that will vacate that. If I
he leaves too much space. Spot on.
If I change him there for Bergvall, right? Now, it's all right saying on this graph that he'll start there. But what you'll actually see is in the game, Bergvall wants to constantly drive into these positions.
Yeah.
He's constantly going there. And what that does is it means this guy is now covering all of that as opposed to some of that.
The problem, right? I fully agree with you on that. And the problem I have with that, Savva, is we're not good enough going forward to allow your midfielders to gamble and make them runs forward, you know, from that deeper position. We're not. Like, if you're Bentancur and Paulinho, I think one thing people underestimate in the midfield is how big discipline is. You know, knowing your role, knowing your position, that you're not vacating, you know, that position all the time. When Bergvall plays in there ahead of Bentancur, he's constantly running. You go back and watch that West Ham game, the first 15, 20 minutes of the game, they constantly exposed us down his side of the midfield because the amount of gaps he was leaving. You know, he plays the ball forward. Sorry?
Which game were you talking to?
The West Ham game, the first 15, 20 minutes of that game. You watched the amount of times they exposed Bergvall, you know, his positioning and stuff like that.
And Wolves.
Dave, exactly.
And the Wolves game. If you watch when Bergvall plays in midfield, we get counted on a lot more because Bergvall, yeah. Dave, I'm not knocking him. I know everyone, I'm not knocking him, but that's not his game. His game is not, right, I'm part of a midfield too. I'm going to step. He wants to drive with it. That's fine. The moment he loses it, Spurs are stretched. And Bentancur doesn't do that. Bentancur allows you that solidity of the two in midfield that can cover a 3-man midfield.
100%.
Sorry.
No, but Frank also alluded to that, right? He was asked about Bergvall recently, and he sort of said, sometimes we have to tell him to stop running, which means Frank is also sort of seeing the same thing. Sometimes when you are playing in beside a Paulinho, you don't need to get forward all the time. And I think the big problem I've got is that Bergvall trusts the forward players almost too much, that he's just passing it to them and making runs beyond them. And that's where he's getting caught out, because we don't have the forward players to be able to hold on to the ball. Or, to be honest with you, if I'm in that midfield, I wouldn't take the gamble either, because I don't back them to be able to hold possession and, play me in if I'm making them runs and stuff like that anyway. So I think, I think you're absolutely spot on. Look, I'm not knocking Bergvall either. I love the fact that he wants to go and affect games. I think that's a huge attribute, and I hope he never loses it. Once you have that attribute where you want to go and win the ball, or you want to go and affect games on, in terms of on the ball, you will always become a proper player because you have that hunger, you have that desire. But he does need, a Paulinho or Bentancur, and even Thomas Frank, some of the coaching staff in his ear, giving him that experience, giving him them nuggets of information and stuff like that, to make him become a better player. So for me, I'm glad we're on the same wavelength on that, because sometimes
he's an enigma, Dave. I think Bergvall's an enigma of a footballer. He's very unique, and this is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing, because if you need to be disciplined, if you need to keep the structural shape, Bergvall for me is not that guy. Now, what I noticed was against Wolves, and definitely against Bodo Glimt, that you see it. When Bergvall plays, Sarr is the same, by the way. Sarr is another one. He's a runner. Sarr is not the guy where you go, right, sit in that 2-man midfield and keep it ticking over. Sarr wants to run and drive, and he's everywhere, and they've got brilliant engines, and that's great. But what I noticed in the first half against Bodo Glimt was Bergvall was trying to drive forward with the ball because that's his natural game. The moment that ball is lost because Odegaard or Johnson or Richarlison can't hold it up, now they're springing an attack, and suddenly you're going, shit, you've got the one-man midfielder on his own, and they're just going to pass it around him with 3 players. This is why I always say to people, calm down with Bergvall. Talented young lad, but calm down with him. Stop. Everyone wants to shoehorn him into every best 11, even if it doesn't suit the way we're playing. And I think this is going to be a bit of an issue, trying to find this guy a spot every week because of the way he plays.
But you don't need to find him a spot every week. He's 19, 20 years of age. At the end of the day, he's plenty of time behind. At the end of the day, we're not a charity. You don't just give minutes because you want to. You give minutes if they've earned it, or if they're better than the player, or performing better than the player in the position ahead of them. And for me, I look at Bergvall. I agree with you. I think there's a huge clamour to sort of get him in the lineup, probably off the back of the season he's had last season. But that's not a good indictment of Tottenham Hotspur, that a 19-year-old is coming in from the Swedish second division and is almost coming out as your best player. It's a bad indictment of your football club, not a good indictment of your football club. I think it's a good indictment of Bergvall and how he's held himself over them when things haven't gone well. And I think you look at that and go, no matter how much trouble Tottenham are in, at least you got a guy that will fight for the cause, and stuff like that. That's all great. But if you want to make the next step in terms of competing up the top of the Premier League, if you want to be able to compete in the Champions League, he's not good enough right now. There's talent there, but he's not good enough right now. You still got to nurture.
You're not allowed to say that, Dave. You're not allowed to say that, because it just means that you don't rate young players. And this is why I get so frustrated.
Well, no one can accuse me of that. I like giving youngsters opportunities, but I think there's a time and a place.
Of course there is. I'm so bored of hearing every single debate when you're talking about Tell, when you're talking about Odegaard and Gray and Bergvall, everything. But asking them to start in the first 11 and bring them on, let them develop, let them grow. And I've always said this, Dave. My problem with fans that go on about the youth so much is they put them on this pedestal up here. Then when people like me and you judge them against the pedestal people have put them on, but they're young. Well, sure, they're young. So let them learn, let them develop. For me, this is what I've said, Dave. Love Paulinho in the 6. No problem with Xavi Simons in the 10. I think if Tottenham really want to go and be a very, very good team, I think next year, a number 8 that controls the game, a Ruben Neves. Yes, all right, Suski, I get it. You put it in 5 times. A Barella, a Ruben Neves, a Locatelli, somebody that goes, give me the ball. Whenever you get it, give me the ball. I'll make the game tick. Michael Carrick, Luka Modric, a Declan Rice to a lesser degree, an Enzo Fernandez, somebody that just keeps the ball moving. Adam Wharton. I think if we get one of those, you know what will happen, Dave? It's the same as anything. Not just Spurs fans, football fans praise average footballers all the time, more out of hope than expectation, right? When you then go and buy a player that is quality, let's use Paulinho and Kudus as the examples, suddenly you realize the players that everyone was banging on about aren't actually as good as you thought because, this is what a player looks like. So all those going, Brennan Johnson. Now you've got Kudus on the right wing.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing anyone say Brennan Johnson should start a game of football, right? Because Kudus is class. I'm not seeing anyone say that anyone other than Paulinho should start a number 6 because Paulinho is class.
Yeah.
So for me, when we get that top ball playing number 8, I think people will then realize, hang on, this is who Bergvall learns from. This is what you do. You bring him in, you give him 10 minutes, 15 minutes here, 90 minutes there. But I feel like we're putting so much pressure on these kids. It's unreal.
But that's been the big problem, though, Savva. You look at Matisse Tell, you look at Udebur, you look at Bergvall, you look at Gray. We put too much pressure on them from their arrival. You know, we expected Matisse Tell to come in here from a player that was on the periphery at Bayern Munich, 19 years of age, to come in and start banging in goals and creating goals. We expected Udebur, who at Burnley, I know they got relegated, but they did have good possession, under Vincent Kompany, and good possession in the final third. And I've watched them, but with Wilson Odobert, there was a lot of rawness to his game. And you're seeing that at Tottenham again. You're expecting the guy to come in and fill Son's boots. You're expecting Matisse Tell to come in and fill Kane's boots. You're expecting, Archie Gray to come in and be that all-encompassing 6 that we've been missing for years. You're expecting Bergvall to come in. You're putting too much pressure and too much expectation on these kids. A well-run club has their first 11, their first 15 even, and you fill it out with youngsters. You dip them in, you dip them out. Ferguson was one of the best I've ever seen at it. He'd pick games for them. You're playing this game. Be ready. They go out, put in a good performance. They earn trust. They go again. If there's an injury, then they step in. But for me, I think at Tottenham, I hear too much of give him minutes. For what? What has he done? For instance, like people say, play Gray in there beside Paulinho. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. We're not a charity. We don't just give minutes for the sake of giving minutes.
Leading up to the Leeds game, there was this sudden clamour for Archie Gray should start this game. And I'm like, sorry. You've got Ampadu, Stack, who's a big lad, by the way, and Longstaff. I don't want Archie Gray against those 3 grown men. I want Bentancur because, yes, is Bentancur amazing? No. For me to say I prefer Bentancur doesn't mean I think Bentancur's world-class, Dave. I just think
there's limitations, of course. We all know that, but he's the better fit for what we've got.
Exactly. Now, Archie Gray played against Doncaster and played very well. I would expect Archie Gray to play well against Doncaster because no disrespect, it's Doncaster, right? Archie Gray, for me, is the same as these others. People are putting them on a pedestal without having seen any evidence from them that they are ready. Bergvall is the same. Bergvall, for me, looks more physically ready. He's powerful. He's bulked up. He drives with the ball. But the problem is we seem to see young players do one thing in a game and we go, they're ready. Archie Gray makes a 10-yard pass. Or Archie Gray against Bodo, where his shot was parried by the keeper and then it went in, own goal or whatever. But, oh, my God, look at the difference Gray's made. Okay, but there's a difference between a moment and now you're playing 90 minutes in central midfield in the Premier League. And I can't even say it, though. Apparently, I hate the youth because it's madness, Dave. I find it crazy.
Yeah, no, look, I understand it, lad. Look, for me, I think, you failed to take the evidence that were presented to you last year. Bergvall played so many more games than what anyone expected to him last year. Same as Gray, same as Johnson, same as Matisse Tell and stuff like that. The reality is, when we had injuries, they were in the team week in, week out. They weren't good enough to put points on the board. They weren't good enough to win games week in, week out. That's why Thomas Frank has gone out and Tottenham have gone out and brought in a Paulinho, a Kudus, and players like that, because they recognise Yes, we've got some good young talent, but young talent alone isn't good enough to take us where we want to. Young talent alone isn't good enough to compete. We put our faith in the young talent last year. We lost more games than we won. That's why we've gone out and had the transfer window we've had, because they've recognized that the quality of player really does matter in terms of your league position, in terms of being able to go and compete. And I think, we're finally getting to a place where I want to be, where you've got a good, we need a couple more windows, obviously, but you've got a good fucking core to your squad that are quality players right throughout. And then you've got some of the really shit hot youngsters to come in, but we've got to stop doing this. At the end of the day, Gray played week in, week out last year. Bergvall played week in, week out last year. We didn't win games of football because there was naivety in a lot of the stuff we were doing last year. Same with that front line. It's why we've gone out and addressed it this summer, and look at the massive difference it's already having. So for me, I agree with you. It's like, you got to stop clamoring to get all these guys in the team. Naturally, they will filter themselves in the team if they're good enough.
Agreed, but I'm
I can
so
understand
bored.
it in years gone by. Just quickly, I can understand it in years gone by when you had the dregs of the old squad, the likes of your Dyers, your Sanchez's, and players like that, and likes of your Bergvines and stuff. People are getting fed up with it, right? I can understand, and I was the sort of same. I was looking, look, give Mikey Moore an opportunity, give Donny an opportunity. I am fed up with watching this shit. But when you bring in the likes of Paulini, when you bring in the likes of Kudus, you then put the onus on them youngster, right? Drag yourself to this level.
Yeah.
And I
Watch
think that's
these
always
guys.
a good thing.
This is what
Exactly.
it takes to be but surely we didn't, we will wrap up in the next few minutes, Dave. I promised an hour.
Oh,
so
look,
we'll
I'm fine.
I mean, are you okay to go for another 10 minutes?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay, we'll go to 20 past. I mean, this is the key thing for me is, we generate the revenue we do. We have the stadium we have. We get in the Champions League, and then fans, all they want to do is cry for young players to play. For me, I've always been the same. And if this is harsh, this is harsh. Bearing in mind, I used to work in youth football, right? If you are good enough, you will get there. If you are good enough, you will get there, right? But at the end of the day, I don't see City, Arsenal, Liverpool. I don't see these fans clamoring for kids to play every week. You know what they're clamoring for? Top players. They are not going, oh, play this kid, he's 19, he gets a shot. They're going, no. I want the best player playing. If this kid comes through, look at Arsenal, right? Since Arsenal bulked out their squad in the summer, sorry to talk about them lot. Since they bulked out their squad in the summer, Lewis Skelly isn't starting games. Waneri's not starting games. Dowman's not starting games, right? Because you know why? They've gone and bought proper footballers for these guys to learn off. And then in a few years' time, these Lewis Skellies and Waneris will grow into that. We're all going, don't start Bentancur, start Gray instead. Based off of what? Let's replace the Uruguayan international that's played for Spurs and Juventus and multiple Champions League campaigns for this 19-year-old that can't hold down a place in a Premier League team. It just blows my mind a little bit. I want Spurs, sorry for the rant, I want Spurs to get better and be a better team. I don't want us to be a breeding ground because people are so worried about young footballers. Oh, you talked about Tell, but he's young. What in the chat yesterday said, oh, Savva would have written off Bale because I don't think Odegaard's brilliant. You would have written off Bale. So there's no link there. There's no link. I watched Bale at Southampton and went, yeah, sign him. He's quality. But Dave, I want to ask you before we move on. I want to ask you, what can Spurs achieve this season? What does success this season look like for you as a fan?
Look, for me, I don't take the pressure off Thomas Frank to try and deliver, a trophy here. At the end of the day, he said it himself when he came in here. He is, coming in here off the back of winning a trophy. And I think there should be that expectation on every single manager at the end of the day. I think he should look to target one of the domestic cup competitions. You look at the Carabao Cup, for instance. How many semi-finals have we been in down the last five or so years? We always usually make it to the last knock-ins of that competition. So I think, there's a real opportunity there. In terms of the league, look, I would like to finish inside the top 7. I think in my predictions I put us down as 7th. I think that's more than achievable. This season in terms of the defensive stability to be able to nick goals from set pieces even if we're not playing well. So I think 7th is more than achievable enough. And then in the Champions League, look, I think it'd be a failure if we don't get out inside the top 8, given how kind the fixtures were to us and stuff like that. Yeah. Beyond that, you know, you're talking about a different level altogether. It's going to be extremely tough. But for me, I don't see why we can't see progression in the league in terms of getting back into the top half and looking to target one of them domestic cups, Savva.
No, mate, listen, I agree with you. I've gone for 6th. I've played it a little bit safe there because I think that depending on injuries, depending on what we do in the summer, 5th could be achievable. But also, it's a lot of games. It's a long season. It could see us drop into 7th. So I think where I've got us at 6th is kind of in and around. The League Cup's going to be interesting, you mentioned there, because obviously the next game is Newcastle away. And Newcastle will be looking at us and going, hang on, we got Spurs at home in the League Cup. This is a competition we should be winning again. So that's going to be interesting. And then FA Cup, I think for me, is all about the luck of the draw, right? If you draw Man City or Liverpool in the first round, you're shit out of luck. But if you get your Blackpools and your Prestons and that, you could go a long, long way. So we'll see. But no, listen, I agree with you. For me, this year was more about consolidation. For me, this year, there's no rush. Like, I know we won the Europa League, but there's no rush that goes, oh my God, this year, everything has to be amazing. Let the manager coach, let him build his team. Let's get another couple of transfer windows under his belt, build a solid foundation, and let's start being I want to start being a football team that people take seriously, Dave.
Yeah, 100%.
I felt under Poch for many years. We were taken. People can banter not winning anything, but how many of these teams, the Chelseas, the Arsenals, the Liverpools, United, liked playing Poch's Spurs? Right? They didn't. I want to be that team again. That's what I want to be.
100%. I'm sick of being clowned by rival fans. I'm sick of being clowned by the media. When we were winning under Pochettino, they had nothing but praise for Tottenham Hotspur. And, you know, in order not to be clowned, the only way is by winning games of football. And I think Thomas Frank can deliver that here. Look, I don't think we should vacate all pressure from Thomas Frank. At the end of the day, you know, there has to be, you know, he has to come in here and compete, you know, or at least show that he can try and compete for trophies. He has to come in here and show that we are massively improved from last season. You know, there are things that he has to show this year. I'm not going to give Frank, you know, alleviate him of all pressure or all responsibility. You know, I am going to have to see a massive improvement this year. And so far, I'm seeing it. My big thing, Savva, is off the back of this international break, how are we going to cope? Because it's usually around this time we fall off. We fell off this time around underneath Antonio Conte. I think, you know, it was in and around this period Nuno got sacked. You know, Jose, we were top of the league for a period of time. You know, we fell off just after this international break. We historically haven't been able to manage the congestion of the fixture list from October all the way through to January.
Yeah.
Now, is this going to change under Thomas Frank? You would hope the way we're set up gives us a better way of managing, you know, this fixture list. And the reason why I say that is we're not too gung-ho either way. We're not too gung-ho going forward. We're also not just sitting behind the ball all the time either. You know, there's a bit of a middle ground with Thomas Frank, which you would hope means, you know, we can sustain this period. But this next test is the huge test of Thomas Frank.
Yeah, of course. And I'm just looking at, you know, between the 19th of October and the 29th, you know, in an 11-day period, we've got 4 games in 3 competitions, right? And 3 of them are away. It's a lot to ask, right? And the thing is, I know what will happen. Every Spurs fan's going to expect that Spurs just rock up and win all 4. And if we don't, it's terrible. It's the end of the world. Look, we've got Villa, followed by Monaco, followed by Everton away, followed by Newcastle away. Anybody who's expecting 4 straight wins from that, I think, is a bit crazy. I really do. I genuinely think we will win a couple, lose 1 and draw 1. I feel like it's a lot. And by the way, 3 days after that 11 days, you got Chelsea at home. Then 3 days later, you've got Copenhagen. So in the space of 17 days, we've got 6 games.
And 4 days later, you've got Man United and then international break. So this next period is huge.
It is huge. But I would like to think that a lot of fans are mature enough to turn around and go, well, yeah, this is a lot. We're asking a lot here, right? Of a squad where we don't have many forwards fit at the moment, where we don't have really any proper left wingers, where, we do only have one defensive midfielder. And, I can't imagine Paulinho is going to be able to play Villa, Monaco, Everton and Newcastle in 11 days. I just don't see it. So hopefully there's a degree of maturity around these next 4 games. But the Villa one's a big one to come back to. Just before we end the show, the Villa one's a big one to come back to, Dave, because Villa have turned their season around. They started really poorly. Now they're 7 games unbeaten. We're 7 games unbeaten. Big game. We could go top this weekend, by the way. We could go top, which is mad, but big game.
Look, massive game. Massive game. I think when you look at Villa as well, they've been struggling. They picked it up a little bit, and I think, you look at Emery, he's not too happy. Tottenham, Villa, you go back down the years, it's traditionally a game where we kick the shit out of each other, isn't it? So sort of like it's going to be a very physical game. But look, I look at some of the games. I think they're winnable. Look, Everton, don't get me wrong. We haven't gone away and looked good at Everton in years. Underneath Antonio Conte, we struggled up there. Underneath Ange Postecoglou, we took a hiding up there. Everton away is traditionally a tricky game for Tottenham Hotspur. Aston Villa, traditionally a tricky game to navigate. And I get your call for, maturity, around this next fit. Not going to happen, Savva.
No, I know, Dave. I know.
I go back to a period we had under Postecoglou in the first season. We had a couple of easy games, and then we had the likes of Newcastle, Arsenal, Chelsea, Man United, and I think Man City and someone else in there, all back to back to back to back to back. We didn't pick up wins, the wins that we should have picked up heading into them games. We just lost game after game after game. It was painful to watch. And right there is where Postecoglou lost a lot of fans if he hadn't lost them off the back of that Fulham game in the Carabao Cup earlier on in the season. I'm not saying Frank is going to lose fans, but mark my words, fans will turn if we end up going into that period and sort of suffering the same. So for me,
of course. I don't think we'll lose though, like we did under Ange. That's the difference. Yeah. And by the way, Lynn, I think you're being very harsh. You've got to remember that our squad isn't ready for this yet. We've just got back into the chat. When we're saying other clubs are being expected to do this, I don't look at our squad. Look at City, right? Look at Liverpool. Look at Arsenal. Look at their squads. Look at Chelsea. Those guys are being asked to do it. They have got depth and players everywhere. We're talking about our first team starters are people like Odegaard and Tell and Bergvall. Like we don't have that depth that they have. So I think it's fan. When I called for a bit of maturity and a bit of time, this is what I mean. It's Frank will be tested, but I don't look at this squad and go, oh, this squad should just win the next 4 games. I think this is going to be tough. Monaco away, by the way. Man City just went there and got a 2-2 draw. Monaco were good. Monaco were a good team at home. But our fans will go, oh, French League, Monaco, we should just be rocking up and winning. Anyway, Dave, I'm going to leave it there. I'm sure we'll speak again in the near future. But give me a quick score prediction for Aston Villa at home.
We're at home. Do you know what? Our home form is something that needs to be sorted out this year. We've been pretty abysmal at home in general. I think, it's amazing. You expect Thomas Frank to come in here and consolidate the home form and then look to work on the away one. We've actually got the best away record in the league, and then at home we're absolutely atrocious. Do you know what? I think it's going to be a tight game, Savva. I think it'll be decided by a goal. I'm going to go 2-1 Tottenham.
Yeah, I was going to go with that as well. I know that sounds like an echo chamber. I'm going to go 2-1 Tottenham. Listen, I've not prescribed to this whole. I wouldn't. I don't subscribe to this whole thing that Tottenham are just going to rock up and win every game. And I think this is the difficulty. We've only lost 1 in 11. There will be a defeat at some point coming. There will be. I think it's how we react to that. But listen, let's hope we can get a win. I think Villa are better than everyone's making out. They've had a difficult start to the season, not lost in 7. They've won their last 4 in all competitions. And Unai Emery's a top manager. Let's not forget that. When people were very much laughing at them because they had 4 bad games, they've had 3 very good years under Unai Emery. This is a good manager. Guys and girls, please get over to Dave and subscribe to the Irish Hotspur, to him and Jack. Great channel. Always been good to me, those two. Always been very complimentary towards me. Well, what I hear, They might slag me off every show. I don't know. But from what I've heard, they've always been very nice. Please get over there, subscribe to those guys. Also, feel free, not buy me a coffee. That if anyone wants to buy me a coffee, fine. Match bingo as well. We've got the games coming up this week for the international games and for the league games. So get over there and type in FHTV to get 100% they'll add 100% of whatever deposit you put in. Listen, much love. Take care. Big up to Machina Joe for becoming a member again. Big up to you and your Everton team. We'll see you on Merseyside very, very soon. Just before we go, let me see who is live and we can send you over to them. Always nice to redirect if somebody's live. Sorry, Dave. And we are ending, I promise. Customization. Redirect. I always forget how to do it, which is pathetic, really. I do this every day.
I don't even know how to do it. You're more advanced than I am. I just put the link of whoever's live in the chat. I don't know if it works or not, but I don't know how to redirect.
I can't see anybody live in the Spurs sphere. I'm going to send you over to Saeed. When you get over to Saeed, just say Savva raid. I'm sure he'll have some good content because he's Man United. They always have some good fun. Take care, everybody. Much love. And as always, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.